record restriction to improve marketability in the workforce and higher education. The court will also partner with Atlanta Victim Witness for the annual food and clothing drive and connect individuals impacted by crime with resources to get back on their feet. Technology enhancements, the court has successfully completed finally the RFP process to refresh the end-of-life audio and visual equipment in the courtrooms that provides for our record keeping, and we will begin the process of acquiring that new equipment in this fiscal year. And the court is also partnering with the Atlanta Police Department on the electronic citations program, which will improve efficiencies and increase access to information online. And last but not least, and perhaps most importantly, we're looking forward to being able to increase the personnel investments for the folks who do the day-to-day work. We want to improve retention of employees by increasing compensation to match the personnel skill set requirements of employment in the criminal justice field and soft skills required for public engagement. That will briefly wrap up my part. I will yield the floor to the court administrator to discuss some of the ins and outs of the financial collections, as well as some of the more particulars of the employee and personnel matters.
Good morning. Rashida Davis. I want to discuss our fine and surcharge remission. We have a 5-year snapshot of both our surcharges and the funds that are deposited into the general fund. And I'll just do a kind of high-level view of those surcharges. As you are familiar, these are statute or state-ordered and required surcharges that are added to our court-ordered fines. There are also some city ordinances that require a surcharge. The surcharge amount can be a flat amount, or it can be a percentage of the overall fine. There are 2 funds for the peace officer, both training and pension. There was a little bit over $2.2 million provided to both of those funds in the calendar year 2023. We have 2 funds for indigent defense. One fund collected a little over $1 million. The second fund is just a fee, a small fee, and it was about $5,000. There are drug abuse and treatment education funds that have collected over just shy of $50,000. And I just want to draw one more fee as far as drawing some attention to that, which would be the GSP motorcycle unit fee. What you can see over time, those amounts have increased, and for a 5-year period, we've collected about $28.5 million that will go to those funds. The next and probably most important area that you guys want to look at and consider are the fines that get deposited into the general fund. I'm happy to report that there is an increase starting at about 2021 to 2023. We're at $19 million for calendar year, for last fiscal year of $19,318,000. It seems that we are moving past the periods of time where there were disruptions, and of course our core, which were regarded to the cyber attack, the post-pandemic, and we are moving out of that period of time. Also, we have recorded about 90%, we've collected about 90% of the court order fines. The next slide deals with the position count. So just wanted to give you a comparison of last fiscal year and this fiscal year. It's important to note that the field positions, it's just a snapshot in time from January of 2024. We actually have 81% of our current positions filled. We have reduced our vacancy rate to about 19%, and we have 188 positions. Overall, we'll have just a slight decrease in variance in funding for the court. We will receive asking for $14.7 million. That makes a 2.19 variance. Overall, our budget, I'll just take the lines where there will be a slight variance. The first and largest category would be in the personnel regular salaries line item. There will be a reduction in about $327,000 in that amount. We will see an increase that will go towards the benefits and retirement funds of $103,000. So overall, for personnel, there will be a variance of $224,000. Taking the purchase and contracted services grouping, we will see a slight reduction in our supplies of about $29,000 and a reduction in the GMA account of $80,000. Overall, for that category, it'll be $104,000. And our entirety of the budget, there will be a reduction of $328,000. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I've got a few. Your budget's interesting in that you're leading the league in line item reductions. So I'll just ask, many of which are minor, but tell me a little bit more about why your salary line is going down.
We received some additional funding in the last fiscal year to account for cost of living increases that were going to be projected to be added over time. As we look forward for the ending of this year, we did have a nice personnel savings that even with where we are now that we're anticipated to have. So the back out was so simply based on monies that we had in addition to or beyond what was spent in the previous fiscal year. Even as we sit here today, we know that the money that will carry over year over year as we provided this budget is approved will be sufficient to carry forward the workforce that we currently have in those field positions. So I think that the primary issue was just money that was in the personnel line item that was unspent, and based on the head count as well as the projections on attrition, that's why that amount was backed out.
Okay, and then explain to us or remind us about your other financing uses line, which has gone from 87,000 to 81,000 to zero. What is that line reference?
The other financing uses was a specific category of money that was placed in the budget primarily, I believe it was maybe 3 years ago now, to be used specifically when we would upgrade and replace the audio and video recording system in the courtrooms. And that was 3 years ago. That was something that we worked directly with the chief financial officer to make happen. We have talked to him. We know now that the contract is only a matter of time forthcoming for the actual dollar amount. His commitment is to make sure that once we get that dollar amount, that money will be put back in so that we can make that purchase. But that money has been sitting there now for 2 cycles because it was specifically there for the court smart replacement that now is a light at the end of the tunnel that definitely will be happening.
Okay. And then you're carrying evidently 35 vacancies. Are they centered on any 1 or 2 specific areas? Are they spread across the organization?
These are all of those vacancies are primarily what we call front-end workers that are in the various departments that do the day-to-day operational work. We just due to the nature of the jobs, there's a natural level of turnover that will occur in the clerk's office, on the finance teams, in the data management department that's actually physically entering that ticket information. So for those positions, that is why we usually kind of see that type of number. Additionally, we do have an increased level of vacancies in our police officer department, and that one is actually critical. We're trying to stay competitive with other opportunities in the city, like at the airport, to be able to attract folks and keep them because they are who do the primary security work for the court when it's open, as well as the bailiff services in the courtroom. So we do have some vacancies there as well. Quite frankly, it's a little bit higher than it typically is, and we're working with the finance team and with the chief operating officer to make that a little bit more of an attractive position so we can keep and retain officers.
Okay. Then I've got just a couple questions. I'm not on public safety. I imagine the public safety colleagues of mine probably already know these, but how's the FTA situation been trending?
The trend we did a recent presentation and we looked at a 3-month period, especially year over year for the first quarter of this year, January, February, and March. That's usually a critical point for us because it represents a higher influx of cases coming out the closing of a calendar year, as well as a natural higher peak in FTAs. The year over year data was very encouraging because the trend is substantially down year over year. That's the good part that I can report. We have been running a strict compliance on FTAs, meaning that if you failed to appear, we followed the strict guidance in the state law, which meant that your license would go into suspension after a period of time if you failed to come into court and cure it. That said, we recently had a change in the law which will make it easier for individuals to clear an open FTA by simply walking into court and getting a new court date. We will see what that does to the FTA rate because obviously that will reduce some of the teeth in what we previously had, but we're optimistic that since some of this was driven by the pandemic, that there will be some changes in behaviors just generally with case resolution, but that's something that we will be watching data on and reporting to the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee.
Did that come out of the recent legislative session?
That is correct.
All right, and then catch me up on your e-citation initiative.
So one of the initiatives, both through Chief Sherbaum as well as the Chief Operating Officer, we have been working together to seriously put together a meaningful and working long-term option for e-citations, and that will be something that will not only be department-wide, but it will also be something that automatically syncs with the court when that information is entered and those devices are docked. So we're actually in the phase of talking about how we can get the technology to communicate. This is something we've now been working on for over a year, and we're expecting that this will be probably one of the biggest game changers technology-wise than we have seen in some time. It will allow us not only to not physically have to enter the citations and that information, but it will also allow us to plan space very, very effectively, meaning that we can take cases, numbers of people, and divide those very easily across courtrooms. Right now, we have to very closely monitor what we have coming in for any particular day because we can't have 500 cases at 9 a.m. split in 2 courtrooms and 50 split in 3 later on in the day, so we have to continuously watch that. We're optimistic that e-citations will give us an opportunity on the front end to be able to route those cases as soon as they're actually issued, and we can track those numbers very effectively. So that's another thing that as we really get teeth into it, we'll be providing information to the PSLA committee to let them know target date because that will be one of the major changes that we've experienced.
Looking forward to that. Colleagues, Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Chairman Shook. Thank you, Chief Judge Portis. Since it was the last subject you spoke about, just to follow up on the e-citation, obviously we've heard there's some Chief Sherbaum and you probably get more citations than any other department, but will it also translate over into other departments like city planning issuing, building citations, fire department, watershed management? Will they have that e-citation program as well?
That's a good question. Technically, those officers do fall under some direction of the Atlanta Police Department, especially for the Housing and Code Enforcement Division. I would like to say ideally, I hope so at some point, but when we look at just the sheer breakdown of the percentage of case types, if we can accomplish the traffic citations first, we would have made an enormous step forward, and then looking to build on that. That in and of itself will be a game changer because even to the question of the numbers of the code citations that you and I usually speak about, that number will be so dramatically smaller that getting information inputted will be so much easier no matter how we're doing it because the volume of physical entry will have been reduced. But I do think that if we can get the traffic portion completed and accomplished, that it's only a matter of adjustment of purchasing equipment and making minor tweaks at that point to be able to accomplish other case types.
And on another subject that was brought up, you mentioned the issue with your courtroom security. And my original question was going to be what are some examples of what comes out of your purchase and contracted services budget? Is that one of those items, security? Is it ad hoc judges? What are some other items that would come out of that?
I would tell you everything comes out of the purchase and contracted services. Everything from our annual case management system, maintenance fee, every contract obviously by name comes out of it. Even the expenses for conflict attorneys comes out of that line item. Obviously for things like paper and postage come out of that as well. We do obviously issue an enormous amount of postage. We're projecting due to the increase in stamp rate that amount will also increase, especially going forward in the future. All of the paper and office supplies that the various departments use come out of that amount as well.
Gotcha. Two final questions. Number one is in the large list of fees that we have, some of these appear to be city controlled, some appear to be state controlled, otherwise. So obviously some are obvious, the Department of Corrections, City Jail, that's a city controlled fee. So the first question is, which other ones are set and controlled by the city? And the second part of that question, as I've been asking all departments and has successfully updated a few so far and will continue the progress, when is the last time a study was done on these? And is that something that the courts would be responsible for or the individual departments such as corrections that benefit from that fee?
Well, the state looks at its fees on a regular basis and quite honestly is very serious about collecting it as well. I would not know the answer on when the last time any of the beneficiaries on the city side have looked at it and looked at the use and the amount for the purposes that it was initially enacted by council. That part, I don't know. Since I have been here, I don't know that there's been any meaningful investigation into whether or not those amounts needed to increase based on their original purpose or decrease based on their purpose. On our end, obviously, we don't keep eye too terribly much on those because the law requires that they be added to them, and we impose the fines that are imposed in court and make sure that on the administration side they're remitted appropriately. I'm happy to have any discussion with you, especially about whether or not there's any opportunity for any changes or different categories such as technology, to be able to enhance some of the things that we currently fund just off of taxpayer resources. If there's an opportunity to fund those things here, I'm happy to discuss that. But as far as the actual usage and where they go, that's not something that we have been a part of those discussions or looking into, at least not in the recent past.
Okay, yeah, we can look further into that in the future. Last question, and haven't heard a whole lot other than updating the camera or audio system. That's, I hope, mentioned coming to a close. What's just the general state of our court facility, and are there other improvements that need to come? How's the roof? How are the bathrooms?
That's actually one that I did want to come back to when I was talking about the number of folks who come into the building. Obviously, the numbers cause the facility to take a beating on a regular basis, without a question. But we also are very cognizant and knowledgeable that it's a representation of the city as well, because a lot of folks will come there, and that will be their activity with a city facility. We are in very serious need of just some general maintenance overhaul from a comprehensive planning level. There are facilities that just need to be updated. We have leaks on the 6th floor, which is the top floor, anytime it rains due to drainage issues in the roof. And you can visibly see these issues. We've been working with our partners in DEEM to maintain these things and patch them as they have created issues, but it's time for a real solid planning overhaul on many things when it comes to the facilities. The public-facing elevators, the back hallway elevators all need very serious attention. And oftentimes there are things that come up that are outside of what the department has to spend because it was not budgeted. And that's why I say a general plan of just overhauling general maintenance there at the facility. Obviously, we don't pay for those things, but at the same time, we're experiencing, we make the calls when an issue does come up, and some of them get to be bigger than what's in the immediate budget at that time for the department to be able to pay. So it's left with a temporary fix that only comes up again when the issue fails. And I think that for across the board, we probably need to just look at where everything is from a maintenance standpoint.
Yep, understood. And of course, being on PSLA, every year of council, I'm sure you've heard, we constantly ask about our police precincts and our fire stations because there's so many of them. But,
Right.
Courthouse is not something I've heard a lot of issues or feedback on, so wanted to ask. And do you know if DEEM has done a recent study? I know they studied fire departments, fire stations, and police precincts. Were y'all included in any of the recent studies they've done on what it would cost to bring the facility?
Yeah, I would hate to say simply no, but not that I know of. If it was completed, we were not involved in providing information. So I will defer to a no, and obviously we would need to be a part of providing that information for it to be a meaningful study. But again, I mean, our partnership has been great to do what we've needed to do up to this point, but to your question and based on what this data shows and the number of people who come in, there are a lot of things. The commitment from the finance team was that they would help work on these things, even basic things that end-of-life metal detectors, at the front entrance and the employee entrance. And these are things that don't present a problem until the one time a problem is presented. And it's just time that, they be updated and replaced because they are at the end of life.
Thank you. I will follow up with DEEM and our finance department on that. But thank you for the presentation and to your colleague.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all you do. And good job. And we are going to recess now and be back here in 45 minutes at 1 o'clock, where our first presenter of the afternoon will be Aviation, page 281. Thank you.